What's up guys, my name is Joe, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about the future of men's hair and what that might look like after this pandemic is over, or after at least everything starts to open back up and we see some form of normal life, whatever that means. I'm kind of interested in thinking about the cultural impact that this pandemic is gonna play in terms of men's hair and men's hairstyles and how we're gonna think about our hair, the new types of hairstyles that we're going to embrace. So to have this discussion, I'm joined with AndrewDoesHair. You've seen him on the channel before. He's the one who taught me the flat wrap technique. That video has like 1.5 million views now. We did a best barber in the world episode, and we also did a haircut video where he cut my hair. He's one of my most well-respected experts when it comes to men's hair. I really look up to him and think that he's doing an amazing job. So without further ado, let's welcome AndrewDoesHair. So what's up, Andrew? Great having you here. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
So I just want to, before we jump into the questions, give you an opportunity to tell people a little bit about your background. You're a professional in the industry. I consider you one of the best. And yeah, give us a little bit of a breakdown of what you do.
Thank you. So I've been a hairdresser for about 15 years now. I own a product line. I travel the world educating other hairdressers and barbers. I own an online education platform for professionals. I pretty much do a little bit of everything you could do in the hair industry.
That about sums it up. And you said about 15 years?
Yeah.
So yes, today I wanted to just talk about, the main focus is the cultural impact that will be on men's hair because of this pandemic. And because, you know, barbers have been closed, people haven't been able to get haircuts as per usual. And just discuss a little bit and see, you know, what you might think will be some of the changes in the men's hair world once we get out of this.
Well, the first thing is going to be beanie sales and hat sales way up. Fedoras might come back.
Do you ever cut your own hair?
I have, and it never turns out great. Something I'm on the quest for right now is I want to find my barber. Like, I always bounce around, but I need to find like my guy. And so I'm like notorious for having bad hair. I mean, I lose so much credibility on YouTube. People are like, you're talking about hair, but your hair sucks. And I'm like, I cut it myself.
It's a rough world we live in. Okay, so for my first question, I've seen some controversy on YouTube coming from professionals and their opinions on people giving themselves a self-haircut. I've seen some professionals saying that they don't think that people should be giving themselves self-haircuts and they should leave that to the professionals. So what's your take on people giving themselves self-haircuts during this pandemic?
Well, I think I might offend a couple professionals when I say this, but if you're so scared of your client cutting their own hair, first of all, it's like huge ego. I mean, like if you think only you have the ability to make them feel good and only you should possess that ability, you've got it all wrong. I mean, at the end of the day, your job is to make your client feel great. And even if that's by way of a Skype call or whatever to guide them through cutting their own hair, if that's how you can do it right now, our job is to make our clients feel good, not to be the sole possessor of this ability to do so. And so when people are like, oh, don't cut your own hair, dude, I want my clients to feel good, whether or not I have anything to do with it. I think it's very closely related to barbers who are really upset when you go to a different barber one time. Like, I don't care about all that. I want my clients to be happy and feel good. I do think also there's a sense of like, if a barber is so afraid or a hairstylist is so afraid that their client's gonna cut their own hair, like, what are you worried they're gonna do it so good that they're not gonna come back to you? They're gonna go, oh my gosh, I'm just gonna cut my own hair for the rest of my life. Like, that's probably not gonna happen, even if they do a decent job. And that's all they need right now, is they just need to feel good with a decent haircut.
And at the end of the day, you do offer a better haircut than someone who's never cut their hair before, which I think is the main...
Hopefully.
Yeah, the main reason. So I'm definitely on the same page with you. I don't really understand the sentiment of like, just leave your hair alone and wait for things to open back up. I mean, a lot of people are gonna do that because they're too scared to cut their own hair, which is completely valid as well. Like, I'm pretty much in that boat. At the end of the day, we're all in lockdown. We're not really seeing people, like, just kind of do whatever you want to do if it's gonna make you happy.
And I think if I can rant here, any advice to anybody who's going to try to cut their own hair, like, don't try to be a hero. Don't try to like give yourself the same fade that you normally get. Just go, okay, I normally get a fade, but I'm just gonna do a 2 on the sides. Because if you don't cut hair and you're cutting your own hair for the first time, you're not gonna be able to do a fade. You're gonna mess your hair up. So just keep it simple.
So what is the most simple haircut a guy could do to themselves right now?
I would say first line of defense, if you take your sideburns and you comb them back, and you cut a straight line in front of the ear, and then you comb your sideburns forward, and you cut a straight line in front of the sideburn, you can keep this under control without damaging too much of the structure of your haircut. And typically that's the first thing that makes people feel like, oh my gosh, I need a haircut. And so I would start with very, very subtle, minor things as your hair starts growing back. And you know, don't go for a full clipper cut until you're absolutely desperate.
In line with like if someone does want to use the clippers, you were saying, you know, don't try a fade. Do you have a recommended like guard length? Like, you don't want to start too short?
I'll say this, like a number 2 on the side might not feel that short. Like you go, no, I like a 1 on the side. But when you do a number 2 all over, it's short. You're like, oh gosh, that's short. So like the obvious answer is start as long as you can. Like if you have an 8 guard, do an 8 everywhere. And then if it still feels kind of fuzzy and long, then go to a 6, you know? So start long and work your way down.
So we talked about, you know, people giving themselves self haircuts, and we can touch on the buzz cut in a little bit as well, because that's a bit separate. But for people who are not going for the buzz cut and not cutting their own hair, and they are letting their hair grow out, maybe even for the first time in their life or in their adult life, do you have any recommendations or tips and tricks for people growing out their hair for the first time, and how to manage that process?
Something to keep in mind as your hair is getting longer is the reason the top of your hair usually seems more manageable than the sides as your hair is growing out is because the top of your hair is way longer. The longer your hair is, the more easily it bends, which means the more easily you can straighten it out, the more easily you can blow dry a cowlick down. And so when the sides of your hair start to get longer and they're really out of control, the reason they're out of control is not because it's different hair than the top, it's because it's shorter. And as it gets longer, it'll start to bend and flow. And so once the sides are growing out from a fade, they'll kind of puff out a little bit. But if you give them another 2 or 3 or 5 weeks, they'll start to lay back. And once you get to the point where every hair on your head lays back, kind of like you have right now, Joe, that is easy street. As soon as everything can lay down, you are past the awkward phase and you can just comb it all back. Trim up maybe along the neck and in front of the sideburns.
So just kind of sticking it out a little bit. Like don't be discouraged if you feel like your hair is unmanageable, because you're saying
it'll become manageable as it gets longer.
When it comes to the buzz cut, we've seen so many more people getting buzz cuts than ever have before, because they're just like, I just want to get rid of it. To people who are on the fence on getting a buzz cut, do you think that there's a certain head shape that suits the buzz cut more, or certain features? And what do people need to think about when they're considering buzzing it all off?
I would say one of the cool things about the buzz cut is that you don't need a specific head shape to do it. It can't really emphasize or de-emphasize anything because it's so short. I think something to keep in mind is we tend to think of a buzz cut as being very homogenized and very bland, like it can't have any style to it. But if you Google celebrities with buzz cuts, you will find a lot of like imperfections is what it looks like, but really what it is character, you know? And so we as mere mortals who aren't famous celebrities, we feel like, oh, I have a cowlick, so I can't look good with this buzz cut. We all look better than we think we do. And I think if you're gonna buzz your hair, it's like, you have to also get in the mindset that like, okay, I'm gonna feel really weird about it the first day, I might feel good about it the second day, and the third day, when I get dressed, I'm gonna feel like I'm missing something. But it's very freeing.
Okay, so my question is, with people not being able to get haircuts right now, what should their primary focus with their hair be? And what I mean by this is like, we've talked about the different kinds of haircuts, people are giving themselves haircuts or whatnot, but also from like a health perspective, I've been on the big health train. Like if you're just inside all day long, you can use hair oils for extended amounts of times and things like that. So what do you think people's primary focus should be with their hair right now, and what should they be thinking about or trying to learn by themselves, since they can't be getting haircuts?
I would say, as your hair is now longer than it's like ever been, take time every time you shower and you have fresh, clean hair to figure out what your hair wants to do. Because as it gets longer, it will act differently. So maybe if you always parted it one way, you might be finding that it falls too flat when you do that now. And so if you part it the other way, you can get some volume. Like if your hair grows left and you push it right, it pops it up. And so experiment with what your hair does at these new lengths and try to feel good about these new looks that you can get out of it. If you're used to getting something cut really short and tight, but now it's laying down, figure out which way it wants to lay down, and be intentional with figuring out your anatomy and getting to know yourself. Like now that go in the bathroom and get to know your anatomy.
Heard it from Andrew first.
I would say if you've been blow drying it like daily or every other day, when you're used to having short hair, maybe during this time as it's getting longer, blow dry it less often. If you can get away with it, once a week, blow dry it. It's very unlikely with short-ish hair that you're going to actually get hair dryer damage, but as your hair gets longer, you definitely want to think about blow drying it less.
Now I want to get into like the meat and potatoes question, the one that's my favorite here, and that has to do with the cultural impact that this pandemic has had on men's hair. Do you think that with the months of lockdown that most of us have experienced, is this going to have a cultural impact on men's hair in the future once we can get back out into the open?
Absolutely.
And we can break this down further, but that's the first question.
Something I noticed pretty quickly when this whole thing started is people who thought their hair was really important to them, it either became really, really important and they were like super upset that they couldn't get haircuts, or they realized that it's not that important to them. And so I think it's going to shake things up in that sense. People who have always made their hair a very, very high priority are either going to make it a higher priority or less of a priority. And over enough time, it'll go back to normal. But I think some of the people that buzz their heads are going to go, hey, I like this, I'm going to keep doing this a few years. But I think think other people are gonna be like the first in line to get back into the salon and willing to pay twice as much, like if they can be first. And so I think on a consumer level, that's gonna change for sure. And then professionally, there's a lot of salons and barbershops that unfortunately are probably not gonna survive this. They're gonna have to go under. And I think we're gonna see a whole bunch of new culture coming into the hair scene through this. And we're gonna see a lot of people kind of die out because of it.
How is this pandemic going to translate into trendy hairstyles that we see when it's all over? Like, what do you think are going to be the most popular hairstyles that, or maybe not the most popular, but the most the most cool hairstyles?
The three big ones that you mentioned, the self-cut, the longer hair, and then the buzz cut. The funny thing is, the buzz cut and the long hair were both already on their way in. The self-cut, I don't know, I can't really comment on that, but I think they were already on their way in anyways, and now I really feel like this is going to accelerate that. People have been getting kind of over the perfectly fresh fade and the perfectly combed back hair. Like they want things that are a little more casual and lived in and longer sides, or even shorter and casual. It's really impossible to tell.
It might be death to the fresh fades and lineups.
I kind of hope so. Not because I dislike those haircuts for what they are. I just dislike that I've done 10 of them a day for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Cool hair is always going to be cool hair. People are always going to want what's trending and what's fashionable and stuff, but right now, like in women's hair, it's very like 1970s natural waves, big curls and things, but at the same time in men's hair, that's coming back too. Like for most of my career, anybody with curly or wavy hair would come in and say, hey, can you blow dry it straight? And that's like what I built my brand on, was blow drying hair straight.
Flat wrap technique, that video.
Flat wrap technique.
That got like 1.5 million views on my channel.
Dang, I'll expect a check. Just kidding.
Well, it boosted yours up quite a bit. I don't know if you've seen it recently.
Yeah, actually, to be honest, I was able to monetize because of your shout out. So yeah. Thank you for that.
All right, well, thanks, Andrew, for everything. I think that we all learned some good information, some interesting thoughts on what men's hair might be like after this pandemic is over. Appreciate you taking the time. I've always considered you to be one of my inspirations in the hair world, and I'll leave Andrew's link down below, or YouTube link, along with Instagram and all that good stuff. Yeah, so thanks very much.
Thanks for having me, Joe. I appreciate it.
Sounds good, man. I'll see you later.